That Was Yesterday podcast is brought to you by Define Mind and Body Wellness, my wellness center here in Glastonbury, Connecticut, where we specialize in holistic services to help shortcut the process so that you can see results fast, but learn to do it in a habitual way. So many of the topics we talk about are part of the program that our clients receive, except they get much more in-depth detail. Also, my workbook of the 10-week program to lose and never look back, which is only available to our patients at Define. If you are interested in holistic body fat spot reduction, or our pod to increase your metabolism, or our cold plunge, or our sauna, which is the best sauna in the world, that I promise you. I know that sounds biased, but you'll see for yourself. Please go to definewellnesscenter.com. You will be prompted to put your information in, and make sure to mention podcast when you do, as you will be eligible for a bigger discount on our introductory services because you are a listener. Appreciate you. Have a great day and enjoy today's podcast.
Really excited about today's Menopause Makeover Masterclass. So we're going to cover a lot today. I think it's an important thing to address the elephant in the room. Why is this guy talking about menopause? So a little bit about my background. I've been coaching for over 2 decades. I've worked with thousands of people of all levels. I don't know how many, hundreds, if not thousands of women, pre-menopause, during menopause, post-menopause, in every round. So I'm a certified licensed hypnotist, voice dialogue facilitator. I've been a trainer since I was 18, so approaching 22 years-ish in that realm, and in training everything from metabolic to weight loss to bodybuilding to strength, yoga certified, mobility, corrective exercise. So I approach this from a lot of different angles because you really need to. And so what we'll be talking about today isn't opinion-based. It is an article I read, not a podcast I listened to. These are things that just work. There are patterns that we see develop over time and certain things that just work no matter the person. And so that's what a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. I had developed a path specifically for women in and around menopause, having seen the depth of the pain that they were going through and seeing well-intentioned women dedicate time, money, and effort and feel completely hopeless. And it showed me that it's a big issue. And it's an issue where I just think there's a lot of misinformation for sure. And there's a lack of information. There are a lot of things that are not acknowledged until it's too late. Most women I talk to who experience menopause talk about it hitting them like falling off a cliff. Just one day things change. Like that doesn't matter. And I'll get into this more, but whether it's someone who's been fit their entire life, someone who's always kind of struggled, or maybe somebody in between. There's no escaping that. So, golden rule of menopause. Whatever's worked up to this point does not work to the same extent that it once did. Would you all agree with that? Yeah. That could be really frustrating. I like to think of the different types of people. I work with a lot of different types of people. There's certain archetypes. There's certain just sort of personality type, just a lot of patterns that you can fix in certain boxes and segments, right? So you take, for example, the woman who nobody's ever had to tell her to work out. Her entire life, she's worked out as much as she could. She's always been able to manipulate her eating and control all of that, control her weight. Then menopause hits. But as we're going to find out, less becomes more. Then you have the woman who maybe never really was overweight significantly. It wasn't too big of an issue. But there always has been some give or take, but always been able to lose a little bit to feel good about herself. And now just feels completely lost in track. And then there's a segment of population who struggled for her entire life with weight for one reason or another, and been told things that she's fat, unathletic, lazy, this, that, the other thing. Then menopause hits, and she starts to get to a place of complete apathy and hopelessness, because not only was the mountain big before, it feels like the mountain is steeper and her feet are in concrete. There's nothing seems to work. And completely starting in menopause is extremely hard. That said, the best time is always now to start, right? That being said, the culprit behind this is that the body is obviously changing. And it's changing on every different level. Menopause directly correlates to the drop-off in metabolism. But with that becomes other things. The body becomes more sensitive to emotions, to food. Sensitivities develop. Obviously, there's a hormone sensitivity, inflammation, lymphatic congestion, cortisol, types of food sensitivities you never had before. And so all of this stuff starts to hit you at once. Not to mention unresolved traumas that might have been micro traumas from the past, macro traumas from the past, that as everything else is happening, they worsen. As life events happen, it triggers. And so the implications, obviously, can be weight gain, can be frustration. And that's the thing that kills me is frustration. Is you have somebody who's trying to ban this and not getting anywhere. That only will last for so long until it's, why even bother? Why go through all this? Why continue to get off the workout? Why eat clean? Why do all of it? And then that slips down falls to a worse state, and then it repeats that pattern, right?
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good. So why weight loss doesn't work long term? Now, when I say weight loss, I think of weight loss and fat loss. They are two different things. And one of the biggest problems, this sounds ironic to say, but one of the big reasons why so many struggle to lose weight in menopause is because they try to lose weight in menopause. But the problem is getting the scale to move when you're going through menopause is extremely hard. So what does that then mean? To get that thing to move, you got to do a lot. You got to either significantly restrict diet, you got to significantly increase energy output, you got to take some sort of medication, some sort of surgery, something that is going to drive an outcome. The problem, though, is a lot of these things, calorie deprivation including, actually slows your metabolism down. You have probably heard, perhaps, that if you wanted to lose a pound of fat, you have a deficit of 500 calories a day. Scientifically, a pound of fat a week, I should say. Scientifically, that checks out.
2,500 calories.
Well, sorry?
2,500 calories.
500 calorie reduction a day over the course of a week.
Oh.
Yeah. And so what ends up happening is that on paper equals a pound loss. The problem, though, is that when menopause hits, it's not that black and white. What that equation does not factor in is metabolic health and some of the other things that we're going to be talking about today. And so in many cases, calorie restriction or deprivation, I should say, actually slows your metabolism down, causes you to lose muscle, because now your body's also facing sarcopenia, which is a natural loss of muscle tissue, which accelerates through menopause, and many other body changes. And so it's not the best approach for that. You would think, hey, let me just work out harder. That doesn't work right if your body is not recovering. And so too much is too much. The body's sensitivity to cortisol significantly increases through menopause. And if you're not recovering from your workouts because of perhaps the intensity of your workouts, but lack of sleep, life stress, work stress, all the other things, all that effort, I don't want to say it's going to waste because it's not, because you're doing something, but can actually get you going in the wrong direction, believe it or not. Restriction. No carbs. Dry August, dry January, whatever it is. I applaud the effort. But the problem is when you tell the brain no, you're creating a fight you don't need. Anytime you tell the brain no on something, there's going to be resistance. It's already hard enough to lose weight. You don't want to add another layer of it. And by the way, cutting out carbs completely might have worked in the past. But when you do that now, what ends up happening is your body becomes more sensitive to carbs. And it's just not feasible for you to live in a world where you're just not going to have carbohydrates again. And so it's the key, the play is like with all of our programs, we include our never look back eating system. That is not a diet, it is a system. There are certain things that will drive your metabolism. That is what it's based off of. It's a system because life is chaotic. If your way to lose weight is predicated on you meal prepping, good luck. Because you're not going to meal prep every day for the rest of your life or every week for the rest of your life. It's just not feasible. If you're going to cook every meal at home and control everything you eat, good luck. Because that's not going to happen. We want you to learn how to eat in the wild, right? It can't be all or nothing. As your metabolism slows down, you pay a tax on excess calories and weight gain. It all matters. So it less becomes about being so perfect with your eating. It more becomes about what can you do that's going to work that you will do over a long period of time. But the other problem with nutrition, and particularly, especially with baby boomers, is many of us were never taught good nutrition. For me, I was taught the food pyramid, where the base of the food pyramid was 8 to 11 servings of carbohydrates a day. But the bigger thing is that you and I both don't know anybody, any healthy adult, who eats 8 to 11 servings of carbohydrates every day and who is healthy, who is not a competitive athlete. We all know that not to be true, right? It's just not true. And so if you don't have that education, and by the way, why I say baby boomers have, I think they're screwed the most in that way, is because they did not get properly educated, as many generations after didn't. But you also, lives in a world where your soil was different. Food was better. You could have milk and not have it affect your stomach. You could do a lot of things that you simply cannot do now because of the way food manufacturing is. So you have that, and then you combine all that with the overabundance of information that exists. Do I do keto? Do I do macros? Do I count calories? Do I do this, that, the other thing? And it just creates overwhelm. And in actuality, though, there's really, it doesn't have to be too complex. We boil it down to 6 things. Hey, we're going to focus on these 6 things when it comes to nutrition. Internal neglect. I have yet to see any program really speak about the internal element of it all, your mental, emotional state. We all can agree, we may not all exercise, but we all can agree that exercise is good for the body. Yet, now there's been more steps towards mental health, but not nearly enough. And when you don't learn how to deal with your internal, your mental, emotional state, it's going to create a lot more problems later on. And so this is a big thing. Like I said, as a hypnotist, voice-dialogue facilitator, I spend a lot of time on. Because if you don't change your internal, no matter what you change externally, it will not last. It's inside out, outside in, it has to be that way. And oh, by the way, what happens to unresolved internal micro and macro traumas? It triggers and gets worsened by life events. Seen it happen. Clients who I was working with who might have been at like a 7 to a 10, they went up to a 9. People who are working with who was a 5 went up to a 7. People who were a 9 went to an 11, right? So as things happen in life, that unresolved trauma will become a bigger issue. And that directly correlates with your body because it's like your CPU, and then you're trying to download a big file. If you have so much going on in the background that's not addressed, your body's not recovering from physical, your mind's not going to have clarity, and that internal stress will cause you to store fat. So we have to address it all. Beyond hormones, there's no denying the correlation between hormones and menopause. I would never minimize that. But I always look through the lens of right? Not just like my hormones out of whack, I'm screwed, period. No. Remove the period and put an and here's what I can do. Because there are things that you can do. Hormones are like taxes. You can't avoid them. They're going to change. Yes, I get it. But I do say this, is that when it comes to hormones, right? It's not just hormones. All other things affect it, right? Yes, hormones are going to cause certain issues, but you can indirectly help it through other issues. Just like tax, right? There's strategy to lessen your tax burden. There is strategy to navigate your hormones. Just because you have hormone fluctuation does not mean you are destined to be overweight your entire life. It just doesn't have to happen. So one of the first components is your central nervous system. Again, not oftentimes associated when you think about weight loss through menopause. But this is how your brain, your body is essentially recovering from day-to-day life. And so if you are getting disrupted sleep, if you do have a lot of mental, emotional stress, right? If your central nervous system is at a 10, a 9, your body is going to be in a fight or flight state. In other words, the life stresses we have hit us as if our ancestors way back when, pre-civilization, were getting attacked by tribes. We're getting chased by wild animals. The body does not separate, the brain doesn't separate imminent threat, actual imminent threat, from a lot of stress. So it acts the same way. So in this way, when stress is really high, your nervous system is at high alert, right? This is why when you have high levels of stress, reproduction goes down, digestion, elimination, metabolism goes down, right? Think about it. Thousands of years ago, you're running away from a tribe. There's not time for intimacy or to go to the bathroom, right? You logically can understand that. But that's what's happening internally. And I work with a lot of women trying to get pregnant, right? One of the big elements, not the only element, it's a very complex thing. But oftentimes, stress is a big part of that, right? But we think about this in the sense of menopause through the lens of, okay, what's that stress in your central nervous system on higher alert always? What is that doing to your digestion, your elimination, your metabolism? It's not just metabolism. That's a big part of it. But if your body's not able to break down food, absorb food, and your system's not able to eliminate properly, that's a serious issue. And the medical world seems to poo it. Just, that's how your body is. I don't believe that to be true. I've seen too many cases of it not being true. But this is why less becomes more. You will not find a bigger advocate of exercise than me. But I will be the first to say, if your only method of losing through menopause is working out, prepare yourself, because you will be frustrated. Because it's going to take a very long time to see change from it. But also, it's counterintuitive. You just can't do super intense workouts if your system's not recovering, then expect to lose the most amount of fat. It's just not how it works. Now, working out is very important, but again, your central nervous system is something you have to keep in mind of your recovery. So here, with our holistic spot reduction, it's medical grade red light. We've been doing it for years. Our red light serves a population who wants to spot reduce trouble areas, tighten skin, as well as people who want to reduce pain and inflammation. It's the same technology. It's just that rehab programs are different, right? But they're both going to help with recovery. There's a lot of other things other than recovery besides our red light or our pod. And we'll talk about some of that stuff. But you got to start thinking about recovery as a part of this whole thing. Lymphatic congestion. So this was something that became very obvious to me as we started to introduce our medical grade red light back in 22. And really, because what happens is the pads wrap around your trouble areas, it creates a puncture. Now that puncture leaks out the excess, the glycerol, triglycerides, fatty acids, toxins. That then goes into your lymphatic system. And what became very evident through using this treatment is that lymphatic drainage could be more understated. So we use it from the perspective of, we think about it like a highway. Throughout your entire body, you have lymph nodes. From our treatment, for you to maximize it, you want to open up those pathways as much as possible. Those pathways get blocked from inflammation, which can be from gut health. Inflammation could be from diet. Inflammation could be from stress. Inflammation could be from injury. Inflammation could be from medication. There's a lot of things that lead to inflammation, right? But scar tissue is a big thing as well. And if you have congestion in certain areas, your body is not going to detox properly. Now, I'm not saying lymphatic congestion directly correlates like 100% with cellulite, but I can tell you for sure that there is a correlation. You're not detoxifying those areas, that cellulite will be worse there. We've seen it to be true, right? A lot of women come to us to help with their mommy pooch, right? What is a mommy pooch? Well, yeah, you're going to store a fat person out in your stomach. But when it comes to having babies, whether it's natural or it's through C-section, what ends up happening is there's a buildup of scar tissue, even if you don't have a C-section. And when that scar tissue blocks your lymphatic pathways in that area. As your metabolism slows down, fat pools together, fills in to these pockets, if you will. And so we see it a lot with the mommy pooch per se, but it happens a lot too elsewhere in the body, particularly thighs and arms. So lymphatic drainage is a really important thing. And by the way, if you're not getting lymphatic drainage, guess what? You have a higher toxicity in your system. You have a higher toxicity in your system that directly affects brain fog and cognition, directly affects fatigue. Now, I am not going to say that there's no such thing as fibromyalgia. I would never ever say that. There is, I do believe, for some people. But I will say with full certainty, a lot of times people are misdiagnosed with that because they have symptoms that are not able to be directly tied to something in the medical world. And oftentimes, that's that fatigue, that lack of recovery, the inflammation, feeling tired, brain fog. So I always say to, but advocate for yourself. If you're diagnosed with something, get information to why am I diagnosed? Where did this come from? What does that actually mean? Because the people I work with get these, oftentimes I will say lazy diagnoses, and that creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of, well, this is what I have, therefore this is how I live my life. And by the way, there's a lot of things that alleviate those symptoms. And I'm not speaking from my butt here, okay? I'm speaking from where people are when they start and they go through our program and where they're at after. But toxicity is a big thing that's not oftentimes talked about. And we're going to talk about that more when we talk about gut health. But these are things that are all part of the equation. Now, the problem in the world we live in, and it's obviously worse now, but it's always been the case, is when something has a hint of, wow, this is good, this is healthy, let's just turn it on its head and make it something it's not. So I can't tell you how many women who come to me and say, the biplate, that's going to help me lose fat, right? Biplate's really good to do. It's a form of lymphatic drainage. But by itself, it's not going to just lose fat. Yeah, there are millions of TikTok videos that tell you otherwise. But again, based off of what? Nothing. The problem with that, though, is a lot of people end up going down that route, end up frustrated, and now it's another failure on their list. Another thing that didn't work. And what do they do with that? Internalize it. And again, that's a problem I have, because those losses, which I wouldn't call it that, but that's what they feel like, those add up. And at some point, that creates a state of apathy. And that's the dangerous state to be in, particularly when your metabolism is slow. So, when we use lymphatic drainage here, like I said, the spot reduction pads we have, medical grade, you're going to puncture the cell, and excess leaks out because the cell is open from the treatment. That is when we had to do lymphatic drainage. It's like shaking out a piggy bank trying to get the coins out, more or less. We also do localized lymphatic drainage because you have to address where your incisions are. But some of this stuff isn't freaking rocket science. And I don't know why doctors are not, or just the world at large, are not giving women this information. It should be available to you at all times. Where I'd say all of that to say this: if you have an incision, especially something like a C-section, gallbladder, appendix, something in your stomach, you've got to do lymphatic drainage in that area. Scar tissue is like cobwebs. If you leave it there, it doesn't go away. It gets thicker, it gets worse, and it spreads, right? Metabolism. We all know this is an issue, right? The problem with the issue is that the metabolic age accelerates like dog years. It's not, okay, I turned 41, my metabolic age is 41. If only it was that simple, right? So we go back to the archetype I mentioned earlier. The woman who has always worked out her entire life, never had been told to work out, never had an issue with her weight. Similarly, if you had someone who's kind of like here and there, gain, lose, but never had an issue, probably the metabolic age is equivalent to the biological age. But again, menopause hits and goes in the other direction. The average woman in menopause, her metabolic age is about 12 years older. 12 years old, that means your metabolism is slower by about 12 years. Which, by the way, that means it's 12 years harder to lose. But that directly affects your energy as well. And that's a problem, because that could then affect what you do for activity. It could also affect, again, your recovery. If you're burning the oil at both ends, working crazy hours, working out super hard with no energy, you're forcing yourself, whether for pre-workouts or caffeine or whatever it is, that can create more harm than good. Disproportionate fat gain is a key thing that happens when your metabolism slows down. So when you do have lymphatic congestion, those areas where you have the congestion, as your metabolism slows down, cool in a disproportionate way. So that's why I say, like, the scar tissue thing, you got to address it. Sarcopenia, this can lead to injury, fat gain, metabolic drop-off, fatigue. Now, sarcopenia is a natural degeneration of muscle tissue. So you lose muscle over time. Now, we all have it, men included. But, unfortunately, women have it to a higher degree. And as we age, it gets worse. Meaning your body's naturally going to release muscle. Okay? And this is in part what drives me crazy with some of the common weight loss methods. Like Optavia is one of them, for example. It tells you not to exercise in 30 days. But what are we doing? right? Are we trying to lose weight? Are we trying to get healthy? Back to weight loss not equaling fat loss. What ends up happening through a lot of these methods of calorie restriction is, yes, you will lose weight. A lot of that weight's muscle. Not only because you're not getting enough nutrition to retain the muscle, but because it naturally accelerates what's already happening in your body. So resistance training is really, really important. Maybe not as a vehicle to transform your body completely. It's a part of it, not the way, but for overall health. The amount of women I work with whose muscle, if they come in, their muscle percents hover around 20%, and nobody's ever told them that was a problem. That's a real problem. When your muscle percent hits 20% or less, you are a fall risk, okay? That's a real thing. Your lateral movement dissipates.
How much it should be?
It depends on your age, but 25% is a good number. But that 25% to 20% can mean a dramatic change. And again, as that muscle goes down, you feel more fatigue. You're going to feel more pain. Think about it, especially if you have a lot of weight to lose and your muscle drops. That's a lot of stress on your joints. Your muscles should be there to protect you, to absorb some of that shock. So you can disconnect. This then creates this other sort of dilemma for people, where it's like, oh, my knee pain. I have this knee pain, and the doctor is like, that's your meniscus. That's this. That's that. And then maybe there is something there, but I can tell you, there's a lot of surgeries that happen that maybe shouldn't happen. Okay. I'm not saying that you can solve everything without surgery, no. And I'm not saying, I just want to be clear, I'm not against the medical world at all. I just feel like people don't have an advocate to speak up for a lot of the stuff that's happening. And there are a lot of surgeries that people should not be getting. And how do I know that? Because I listen to these stories, I hear these stories, I know where they're at before, I know where they get it and where they're at after. And a lot of times when you get a surgery, when you don't address the underlying issue, who cares if the ligament's fixed? If the mobility around it, the tissue around it's a mess. You're going to end up right back where you started, which is a horrible thing to do, especially as we age. You don't obviously want to get surgery. You don't absolutely need, especially without the context of what's required after.
Strength training should you do?
Sorry?
How much strength training should you do? Because I do strength training.
Yeah, so look, my rule of thumb is something about nothing is progress. So anything you can do more than nothing is progress. And so here's what I would say is ideally we do it in 3 days, right? But if you're someone who's never worked out before, let's just get going 1 day a week. You know what I mean? You can get benefit from 1 day a week. You can get benefit, believe it or not, from a 5 to 10 minute workout. It's all relative. It really is relative. But when you think about strength training, you want to think about strength training, not just weights, not just exercise. In other words, you want to put your body in a position to build strength. Strength responds to the stimulus of weight that is harder than what you're used to doing. Again, which drives me crazy is the idea of the purple pink dumbbells. Oh, this is these are girls' weights, right? Or so many women grew up with girl push-ups. Oh, really? Because I know a lot of guys who can't do a regular push-up. And I know a lot of women who can do a regular push-up. But again, just think about that frame. You grew up as a girl, right? And you're told this is how you do push-ups. That automatically disempowers you to a degree, right? And then what if you struggle with those? Then what are you? Not athletic? Bullshit, right? Look, my wife thinks I see faces is a pretty creepy thing, but I think it's beautiful. I love watching babies move. If you watch a baby, a toddler, pick something up, they have perfect deadlift form. You watch them squat, they have perfect squatting form. Their hips are in perfect position, their back is flat, they bend at their hips, not at their back, right? Most adults can't do that. Not because you can't do that, because you've lost the ability to do that, because it hasn't been practiced, which isn't necessarily your fault. Because again, if you grew up in that thinking of, I'm not athletic, I can't exercise, that's what you think. And guess what? You'll get worse at it if you don't do it, just like anything else. You could also get better at it if you start, right? But the point is, we are meant to move. It's a part of our life. And now, again, we get in this world now where a lot of ways to lose weight don't include exercise as a part of it. Now, I'm not saying you have to be doing Olympic lifting. I don't believe that to be true. In fact, most women, I don't think, should do Olympic lifting if you're struggling with some of the things that we're talking about here. but certainly basic strength training. And so with that, you just want to use a weight that's challenging for you. But 3 days a week would be the ideal. You don't need a lot of time. I love talking about this stuff because it's so, what makes me sick is a couple times a week. Oh my gosh, we talk to your doctor about this? What did he say? That's just how my body is. That's how it's always been. That is not true. It might have always been that way, but it doesn't mean it has to be that way. You are not designed, nobody is designed to hold weights, okay? Nobody. It's not meant to be like that. You're not designed to have something artificial to make you go to the bathroom, right? What a lot of weight loss places do, places like Medi Weight Loss, now they have pills to poop, okay? Look, I get it. If you need to eliminate, you need to eliminate. I'm not against that. But I am against lying to ourselves to say, this is how your body is, and you have to take a laxative or something like that to go to the bathroom. I hadn't seen it to be true. And I would challenge anybody to prove me wrong. If you have that issue, let's talk. Let's get you following what I got to say. Let's get you going. I can guarantee you'll be better. And again, this is where it goes back to how is this stuff not mainstream? I don't know, the typical story a lot of people experience when they go to a gut health doctor, they see a nurse practitioner, that's 2 or 3 months out, they have to wait. They get about 5 minutes to talk to that person. And then they get treated for symptoms, right? They get stuff like omeprazole. Go look up the side effects of omeprazole. Omeprazole used to have servings, like 30 or whatever. And it used to stay on the serving. Don't take longer than 2 weeks. You know what they do now? They sell them in 2-week servings. So don't have to have that warning. So you just keep buying it. And there's so many people who've never had a conversation. The doctor literally never said to them, there's implications here. And if you're in severe pain, I'm not against medication. But we're only looking through that lens, that's a problem. Because you're taking people who have an issue and you're telling them there's something wrong with you, you need to take this. Where do they live up? Where do they end up? Gut health for most people has to do with anxiety, hydration, acidity, absorption. Those are the main components. And a lot of other things that affect their sensitivities and things like that. But alkalinity is not just drinking alkaline water. There's more to that, right? And it creates serious issues. In IBS, how many times have I heard someone have IBS? And I'm asking, how much water you drink a day? 2 water bottles. I'm not saying proper elimination boils down to simply just drinking more water. But I can tell you with 100% certainty, if you're drinking less than your body weight of ounces of water per day and you're constipated, you don't have IBS, you have a hydration issue. Now, what is IBS anyway? What does it actually mean? Most times, it just reflects that lack of hydration. Most times, okay? And maybe there's some other underlying issues there. But again, these are things that aren't part of the equation, but they're problems. You know what happens? If tomorrow, let's just say you go every other day, eliminate, right? Let's say you don't go today, and then you go tomorrow. You don't get 2 days worth. You get a little bit more than 1 when you eliminate. So what does that then mean? Well, oh shit. But this is a really important, the waste becomes toxins.
Yes.
And toxins are fat soluble, meaning they go inside your fat cells. That means they create inflammation inside your fat cells. Also, toxins lead to free radicals. Free radicals lead to cancers and diseases. So going back to that's just how your body is, that's an extremely lazy answer. So if anybody ever tells you that, I would second guess working with them because there's way more going on. And again, it's not rocket science. Now, not to say you should know that, but certainly I would think a professional in that world should. If I can figure it out, goodness, other people should be able to as well. So, unresolved micro and macro traumas manifest. You cannot underestimate the effect of a micro trauma. Sometimes you might not even know what that is. Through as I do hypnosis work, the beautiful thing about hypnosis, see, we have this idea of what hypnosis is. That's not what it is. Newsflash. Hypnosis is just a fancy word for a deep state of relaxation. That is all it is. When you're in a relaxed state, your subconscious is opening. Your subconscious is where you hold your pain. Your subconscious is where you hold your potential. And that is where you can rewire some of the default settings that you have. So when I work with people, they're like, I'm just a really anxious person. No, you're not. I don't believe that to be true at all. I'm not saying you don't have anxiety. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying, though, you're identifying as something. It doesn't mean that's actually how you were and how you're designed. Somewhere along the way, your default setting was adjusted. That anxiety provided safety, made you feel better, protection. This happens subconsciously, by the way. But when you go through traumatic events, anxiety becomes a comfort thing, believe it or not. The deeper you get into subconscious work, you find that to be true. And when that is the case, it doesn't necessarily turn off, right? So a lot of the work I do, I involve parts work. So in all of us, there are primary parts and there are the sum parts. Your primary parts are the ones who came into your life at some time, basically help your psyche be protected through some sort of vulnerable state. There's a way of seeing the world. That's why these parts develop. They come into your life to help you at certain parts. And so all of these parts, they're infinite, but they're never only just good, they're never just only bad, right? But if they are at odds, which does happen when you're going through life stages like with menopause, because one of the things that happens a lot of times with a lot of women I work with, their kids will be graduating. Now also their entire identity and purpose is different. Then everything else is changing in their body. That creates an empty need, right? Some of the more common parts I work with, the inner rebel, for example. So I have a lot of people come to me for hypnosis, for weight loss, for cravings, for binge eating, those sort of things. It's never about willpower. It's not about being lazy. It's not about being fat. None of that is true. It's your nervous system out of whack, and you develop a response to seek out safety and comfort through eating. The inner rebel is a part of you that takes over control in different ways. And so we lose that, particularly women, because you're nurturing. You're always nurturing everybody, right? And then you get married, and you get a job, and you have kids, and everything becomes about everybody, right? And all of a sudden, there's that part of you who's like, hey, what about the things I like? What about what I want to do? She gets disowned. That means she gets pushed to the side. Carl Jung called it the shadow. No matter where you go, it goes, right? When you suppress stuff, it doesn't go away. The equivalent is taking a beach ball and trying to press it under water. It's like, you can do that, but you require a lot of energy to keep it down. And at some point, it's going to pop back up. And when it does, it will pop back up with more force than it was before. So the inner rebel, it seeks cravings because that is something that gives direct control. And then there's something internally that you seek out control, lack of certainty in your life, whatever else. Another thing, comfort, right? It seeks out something it can do for itself without boundaries. Oftentimes that translates into eating. It's not just eating, but the point is, like, there's a lot of this stuff that happens. Another one for the perfectionist, right? I always say I'm a recovering perfectionist. It's in me too. It's always right there. The thing with perfectionism, though, is, as you know, through menopause, weight loss, fat loss, is a very imperfect journey of which you have not a ton of control over. And so the all or nothing element of perfectionism can really kick in and affect you. Because I can't meal prep 5 days a week. I can't work out 5 days a week. I don't even bother. And so there's the inner child. But the point is that there are internal parts of your personality that are likely conflicted. That only if you go unresolved through the challenges and stresses of menopause can become more problematic. Another thing that happens is a fear of failure. Now, you hear about the fear of failure, and conceptually, like, oh, yeah, I don't really care. I'm not losing weight. What do I care about if I don't lose a lot of weight? It's way deeper than that. Fear and anxiety are the breeding ground for self-sabotage. And self-sabotage, it will disguise itself in any way it can. It's a chameleon. And any parts of you that you can't, shouldn't, won't, whatever is going on, it will find a way to rationalize that. I call them ants, automatic negative thoughts. As soon as something comes in, that you're like, oh, I know I have this feeling in me, I should go do this. But what about this, right? So some examples that come up a lot is the Labor Day, right? This time of year, it's back and pro. Because what a lot of women will say I work with around this time, this is historic. Like, I'm not talking about now, I'm talking about as long as I've been coaching people. It's like, this is amazing. This is great as everything I need. Oh my God, I'm so excited. After Labor Day, I got this vacation. I've got this coming up. The kids' schedule gets back to normal. My work schedule normalizes. We'll do it after Labor Day. It also happens with New Year's. From second week in November on, most people are going to have in their head, I'm just going to wait for the holidays to be over. It's too busy. There's too much stuff going on. I do have fun. But why those don't work? What, 81%, if not higher, people stop their New Year's resolution by February. If you get with those two ways of thinking, you're basically telling your system, it's just not that important right now. When I'm ready, get ready. Until then, it's fine. That's really what you're telling your system. And if that's the case, good luck ever keeping it sustainable. Because guess what? Your journey through menopause doesn't end in 6 weeks, 12 months, 3 months. This is a journey through life. Menopause is a chapter. It changes the rules. But you got to play the game. And so if you're waiting for that perfect time, what you're really doing is kicking the can down the road and making it that much worse. So I always tell people, look, if you're not ready, if you don't want to get started, just declare that. Don't lie to yourself, because you're going to only end up creating more of an issue. But at the end of the day, the best time is always now. Because it does not ever get easier with time. And that's just to be true no matter where you're at on your journey, no matter what you're looking to do. Sensitivity to cortisol, right? A lot of things cause stress. The body becomes more stressed, or more sensitive to stress through menopause. Again, these internal things happening in the background, it's just making it all that much harder. The impact of stress, that is. Obviously, sleep. Look, that is a part of menopause, waking you up with various things. We do hypnosis to help you fall asleep, to help you stay asleep, but it's still not a perfect thing. But again, it's not all or nothing. I can guarantee you there's ways to increase your sleep. It doesn't mean it's being perfect all the time, right? But if you just let it happen like it happens, whatever it is, well, guess what? It's going to get out of control more and more. It's going to drive up your cortisol. As the more cortisol your body has, the more it's going to hold on to fat. So the harsh reality of a lot of well-known solutions. I want to be very clear here. In no way am I putting down any of these things. But you got to call it a spade. And it's important to acknowledge what the reality of some of this stuff is, because people don't get the full picture. Then they end up stuck in a nightmare. Dr. DeMartini said, if you're thinking about just the good, you will wake up in a nightmare, right? Now, certainly thinking about just the bad isn't the best approach either, right? So it's that willful optimism of, yeah, the glass is half empty, and still it's going to be there. It's not going to be just an easy, perfect route. There are always downsides to every upside. Diet, if your method to lose during menopause is not something you can sustain, don't bother. You would be shocked at how many women I've worked with over the last 20 years who have lost 100 pounds before coming to me. The sad thing is, it's the same weight. In other words, lose 10, gain 15. Lose 15, gain 20. Back and forth, and that accumulates over time. But you pay a tax each time you gain weight. Dieting is not going to be a sustainable solution. Yeah, if you're going to step on stage to bodybuild, sure, that would require a diet. If you want to tighten things up, okay, cool, as long as you have a bridge plan after. But to think that's just going to be the solution, hell no, it just doesn't work. Then you have things like keto, which isn't new, by the way. There's actually some utility which actually helps certain things. But a woman in menopause, the last diet I would recommend would be a keto diet. Most people even do a keto diet don't even follow the exact rules of the keto diet. There's so much information, it confuses people. But keto is playing a Russian roulette. Focus on fat, fast 9 calories a gram. Your metabolism, digestion, elimination slow down through menopause. When you're just eating a lot of fat, there's a high risk going on there. And plus, just kick out carbs completely again. Good luck. It's just not going to be sustainable, right? Good fats are good fats. but good fats are still 9 calories a gram. So you have to be aware of fat intake. And that's one of the things I see a lot of women struggle with. Having, say, nuts and stuff like this a lot as snacks. It's like, that's healthy, right? Yeah, but if your energy output isn't exceeding your input, particularly with fat, it's going to imply you're sore. And that's why you hear so much about protein, right? Why? Protein builds and retains muscle. But also protein can be an energy source. Carbs are energy. Fat can be energy. Fat's a really long, sustaining source of energy. But if you don't need that energy, what then happens? So I'm not one to say you should cut out carbs completely. I don't think that's a good approach. But it also can't be as many carbs as you want. I'm sorry, that's just not the world we live in. That's just not going to equate to your goals. So there has to be an in between. And that's, again, what we're trying to teach people about nutrient plan and nutrition plan. Intense workouts, we've already kind of talked about. GLP-1s. I am not in any way, wouldn't ever disparage GLP-1. I think, to me, especially as a woman in menopause, it makes the most logical sense on the surface. I'm struggling with weight. I've tried everything. Nothing works. Doctor, give me something, right?
Is that Ozempic?
Ozempic.
What do you believe in
Semaglutide. So, yeah, and so, look, again, I'm speaking from, not an opinion, from having worked with hundreds of women who have been treated like lab rats. Oh, that doesn't work, try that one. Doesn't work, try that one. Doesn't work, try that one. What is that ever good for you? Number one, but different conversation. Women who have taken it, lost, got off it, gained, like you name it, we've worked with them. Now, some things I can find and tell you 100% certainty with GLP-1. Number one is that if anybody ever tells you can take it for the rest of your life, I wouldn't trust them. That is such a disempowering, I believe, unethical thing to say to somebody. It's mind-blowing. Because what ends up happening is that, look, again, I want to be clear. GLP-1s can be a good bridge. Can be for certain people. But they are a bridge, okay? It is not the way to keep forever. And so what ends up happening sometimes, you have some women who aren't losing anything on it. So what's the natural response? We've got to increase it, right? And so I can tell you, if you are ever thinking about GLP-1s, the one thing that I found to work is a microdose where they plan to get off of it. You're not going to lose weight as much as you might want, but you're also not going to throw your system through a whack. Because what ends up happening is when you keep increasing the dosage, there are side effects that accompany it. Now, most women are going to experience gut health issues, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, lack of bowel movements. That's not everybody, but I will say most. So again, that's an issue, right? Because if you're taking something to be healthier, you're not moving your bowels, what are we really doing? Now, another thing I can tell you across the board, statistically, when people come in, and I hate even having this conversation with women, I don't want them to feel bad about what they've done, because they're oftentimes like, I lost 20 pounds, 50 pounds to, but then we're looking at their body composition. Their muscle percent is 20%. Their body fat percent is 48%, 52%. Their visceral fat. Has your doctor ever talked to you about visceral fat?
Yes.
Okay, good. You have a good doctor. Most don't. So a lot of the women I work with GLP-1s have a high visceral fat despite losing a lot of weight. What is visceral fat? Fat is the fat behind the fat around your vital organs, your heart, liver, and kidneys. Now, as a woman, you store fat first and last in the stomach. The visceral fat's behind that. Right? So if that's going up, but your skill's going down, you're losing muscle, but you're storing fat with your operating center of your body. That's dangerous for health. That leads to high blood pressure, cholesterol issues, heart disease, heart attacks, the whole thing. So those are the common trends we see from a statistical standpoint with GLP-1. But the bigger thing I would say is if you're on it now, I'm not necessarily suggesting you just go cold turkey. But what I would say is if you don't have a plan in place to bridge off of it, you need one. Because what ends up happening is that you can talk to anybody who has come off of it, and they'll tell you the same thing, is the appetite suppresses the GLP-1. You're eating less. Naturally, it's slowing down your system. I don't know how one could argue that it's not. And the data is there if you actually look at these people's compositions, right? So your metabolism is effectively slowing down while you're taking it. You're losing weight because you're eating less. So what happens when you get off of it? Your appetite centers, your hunger comes back, but your metabolism is damaged still. It doesn't just go back to normal. So you take a woman whose metabolic age is, say, 12 years older through menopause, then gets on the GLP-1, and now it's slower from that, and then she gets off of it, and that weight. And so food noise has become a thing you hear a lot about. I do a lot of that with my hypnosis work. But again, it's not because this person doesn't have willpower. They don't have, it's not as simple as that. It really isn't. Look, our society tries to solve an emotional issue, which is weight loss, with a logical solution. And that is why none of these things work. Because it's an emotional issue at its core, and it's a complex issue. As we talked about, there's a lot of things that are going on here. I'll quickly just run through these, only because I've had so many people who have had the side effects and byproducts and they were never told otherwise. I don't know how this information is not out more readily available. Gastric bypass, gastric sleeve. Look, if you are somebody who is in your entire life can't lose weight, had a hard time losing weight, it makes complete sense why you would be told that if you do this surgery, you're going to lose weight, it'll be good. But there's a reality of it. Your digestion elimination changes almost always for the rest of your life. Some women I've talked to, more than one, more than five, throw up every time they eat after. It takes them an hour to chew a piece of chicken. An hour. Imagine that. A lot of it's irreversible, okay? So I just say that to say, and by the way, anybody who's gotten it done will tell you, it's not a vacation. You think you're just going to get it done and your weight's off you. No, you still got this whole thing here, okay? Unless they give you a lobotomy, when they give you the weight loss. And I'd say that jokingly, but I think that to say, look, there's this part we have to address. So there's just a lot more to it than you think. Tummy tuck, gastric, or tummy tuck, liposuction. These are things that a lot of you think, that sounds great. Let me just suck the fat out of that area. The problem with that is now you're manipulating your physiology. You're like, believe it or not, you're supposed to have fat where you have fat. That's how the human body is designed. Visceral fat, by the way, you need to have. It's not bad to have. It insulates your organs. Exactly. The bad thing is when it's high. Okay? What the point, when you manipulate your physiology through tummy tuck liposuction, it's not like fat's never just, like, oh, your body's like, I guess I just can't have fat. No, it's what's called fatty displacement. And I can tell you the amount of women I've seen who spend $5,000, $7,000, you name it, on these type surgeries, who then come in and have fatty displacement because guess what? The fat will find somewhere to go. But again, which therefore manipulates your physiology. And so if you don't adjust your metabolism and then you're gaining fat, it's not like it's just going to go right out of your body. It finds a way, it finds somewhere to stay. Okay? So we see a lot on the sides. You see sometimes your upper stomach. But it's a very common thing. Feel free to look it up.
GLP-1 argument is if you don't eat, it's coming from the fat cells. Because naturally you're eating very little. So the energy is taken from the fat cells. So naturally you're losing. That's the argument. I've done so many.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of arguments. Yeah, of course. But again, you know what you're not getting from your fat cells? Muscle.
Yeah.
You're losing muscle. It's not helping you eliminate. Those are big issues. So if you're losing muscle and you're holding fat in the wrong areas, that's problematic. And again, I'm not here to say everybody's going to have the worst reaction. But I can say these are common reactions that a lot of people deal with. Hormone replacement. Look, I can tell you for sure, there's certain patches with estrogen that have worked really well for women. Yes. Now, I'm not here to advocate for any one brand or anything like that. I just say those things can be good. But again, that's not just the period, end of story. There's more going on. Okay? The traditional mental health approach. So, when I say traditional mental health approach, I can tell you most hypnosis people I've worked with have done therapy, have talked, and some of them talk about their issue, immediately get prescribed medication. Immediately. I don't think SSRIs are bad. They are a bridge. Sometimes, especially if you have crazy, horrible things in your life that are happening, they can help lighten the load. But if that is something that is just going to be the solution without ever solving the root cause, there's a real problem. So use anxiety as an example. Anxiety isn't something, it's not a disease. But in 2026, we should have anxiety. Everybody has anxiety. Literally everybody has anxiety. It's a part of your system, right? Anxiety is an alarm clock, essentially. It's there to alert you of a fear, okay? So if you think about an alarm clock that's going off constantly, that means there's an issue there, right? So you have to address the issue. What an SSRI can do is basically turn the volume down. Do you ever have an alarm clock and didn't know how to shut off? You could find a plug.
I took serotonin reuptake inhibitor, the antidepressant.
Yeah, no, we're talking about menopause, aren't we? But SSRIs, I'm just saying, like, when you're not feeling good about yourself, maybe some of the byproducts of menopause, you can get, these oftentimes get diagnosed or prescribed, okay? When it comes to anxiety, if you just turn the volume down, it's not getting better. And everybody has anxiety, it's okay. You just gotta learn how to deal with it, right? So the traditional approach is generally, now there's a lot of great therapists out there, right? But I'm just going off of my experience and knowing there are a lot of women, men too, who end up just talking. And the difference, what I would say between therapy and hypnosis is in therapy, you're talking consciously. When you're talking consciously, you can easily deflect, project, distract, and avoid. Those things happen very easily. When you're relaxed, those things tend to happen less. But the point is that if you don't address the core issue, no matter what you got going on, you're up shit's creek, all right? What we do is combine it all. So recovery isn't just, obviously, like I said, we have the medical grade for lighting, spot reduction fast cells will also reduce pain and inflammation, right? It's going to tighten and tone skin. It's not magic, okay? It works very well, but it's not magic. It's holistic. So lifestyle modifications are a part of it, but it accelerates that process. But recovery is not just that. Recovery is getting your body to lower your cortisol, your active, your heart rate variability, get it to slow down a little bit. But it's an important part of the whole thing, oftentimes not talked about. Movement. They gotta move. Now, we have programs that guarantee 2 sizes to guarantee 1 side induction. We say minimum of 45 minutes. That's not because we don't believe working out is important, but it's because a lot of times people are just frustrated and want to see a result. We don't want to throw too much at you at once, right? So movement's important beyond that. We want to get you to a place where you can exercise, but it's not necessarily required for our spot reduction treatments. Fuel. Nutrition is an extremely important part of it all. You have to think about it as fuel, though. I see stuff online, oh, there's no bad food. Bullshit, there is bad food. Doesn't mean you can never have it, but can we just have an honest conversation? A spade is a spade, right? Donuts are not healthy. I don't care what anybody says, they're not. Should you never have a donut? Well, of course not, right? But it's helping you understand, like, you gotta eat for fuel day in and day out. And a lot of that fuel, particularly for women, is protein, but it's not just that. There's certain ways to go about eating that's going to put you in a position to metabolize, to retain muscle. That's what we center our approach on. It's a system, not a diet. Rewire. Not every one of our clients does hypnosis or anything like that. But when I work with people, I want them to have a long-term change. If you've had an operating system that has kept you young your entire life, I will say again, I know I repeated this, not because you're lazy or stupid or you have some lack of abilities, not that. Again, you cannot solve an emotional issue with a logical solution. So if you find yourself perpetually stuck, it's because there's more going on behind the scenes. And it can be, you can change that default setting. Think about it. I know for some of you guys when you were kids, there was not operating systems on computers that were readily available in the household. So I'll use this 90s example for you. Let's imagine in 2026, you try to use Windows 95. Good luck, right? It's an outdated operating system. Oftentimes, we develop a default setting in our brain, which then dictates the decisions you make in life and how you see yourself throughout the world. That oftentimes get reinforced by the world. And that can make you feel like you are something that you might not already be, that you might not actually be. So rewire is an important part of it. So again, heart rate, fat loss, reducing pain, tightening the tone, the skin. It works extremely well. But as I mentioned before, for us to see a tangible change in a mirror and how your clothes fit, we need to get to about a 10% reduction at your trouble area. So generally, that takes about 8 to 12 treatments for a one size. But you're going to lose every time you come in. You got to think about it like, I had somebody yesterday, her first treatment, she lost, I think it's 25 off her stomach. That's a hell of a lot to lose in 10 minutes. But it's still a small percentage of the overall circumference.